You pull out your wallet every day. You expect it to hold paper. You expect it to hold cards. You expect it to hold value. But for 99% of human history, wallets didn't exist. Coins didn't exist. Paper money didn't exist. So how did ancient humans pay for food? How did they collect taxes? How did they run armies and build monuments? The answer will change everything you think you know about money. You were told that early humans traded. You were told that someone with wheat swapped it for someone with fish. You were told that barter was the first economy. That story is a lie. In 1958, an economist named Caroline Humphrey studied every documented case of barter in human history. She found something shocking. No society anywhere ever ran its daily economy on barter alone. Not one. Barter happens between strangers who will never meet again. It happens in crisis moments when normal systems collapse. But it never serves as the foundation of a functioning community. The barter myth was invented by economists who needed a starting point for their theories. It was never real. So what was real? The real system was stranger. It was built on trust. It was built on memory. It was built on relationships. In ancient Sumer, around 3500 BCE, people did not trade goods directly. They tracked obligations. You helped your neighbor build his roof. He owed you. You gave grain to the temple. The temple owed you. Everything was recorded. Everything was remembered. And the tool they used to remember was the most powerful financial instrument ever created, the clay tablet. A clay tablet from 2400. BCE records a debt of 4,600 liters of barley. It names the debtor. It names the creditor. It specifies the due date. It lists witnesses. This tablet was a contract. It was a promise. It was money, long before the first coin was ever stamped. Wait, how can a debt be money? Think about it. When you hold a $10 bill, what are you actually holding? You are holding a promise. The paper itself is worthless. The value comes from the collective belief that someone will honor that promise. Ancient clay tablets worked the same way. They were promises. They were IOUs. They were transferable. If someone owed you barley, you could hand that tablet to a third person. Now, the third person could collect the barley. The tablet itself became a medium of exchange. Debt was the first currency. And the institution that managed all this debt was the temple. The temple was not just a place of worship. The temple was the bank. The temple was the tax office. The temple was the central authority that stored grain, issued credit, and collected debts. In ancient Mesopotamia, every major city had a temple complex at its center. These complexes held massive granaries. In ancient Egypt, workers building the pyramids received monthly rations of barley and wheat. A laborer earned about 4 liters of grain per day. A foreman earned 8 liters. These rations were measured precisely. They were recorded on papyrus. They were distributed from centralized storehouses. Grain was the salary. Grain was the pension. Grain was the bonus you received for overtime. And here's the brilliant part. Grain could be saved. Grain could be stored. Grain could be divided into smaller portions. And most importantly, people always needed to eat. Grain never lost its value because hunger never ended. It was the perfect currency. Stable, divisible, universally accepted. You could pay your taxes in grain. You could pay your rent in grain. You could buy a house in grain. The Egyptian word for grain and the Egyptian word for money were the same word. But grain was not the only thing that became currency. Anything that everyone agreed had value could serve as money. Salt was so valuable in ancient Rome that soldiers received a salt ration as part of their pay. The word salary comes from salarium, salt money. Cattle were currency across Africa, India, and Northern Europe. 1 cow could buy you land. 10 cows could buy you a wife. 100 cows could make you a chief. Cattle were walking bank accounts. They produced milk. They produced calves. They produced labor. They were alive. They grew. Your investment literally reproduced itself. But what if you lived near the ocean? Then your currency was shells. Cowrie shells became one of the most widely used forms of money in human history. They circulated across Africa, Asia, and the Pacific for over 3,000 years. In some parts of Africa, 40 cowrie shells bought a goat. 2,000 shells bought a slave. 20,000 shells bought a wife. Shells were small. They were uniform. They were impossible to counterfeit. No one could manufacture a fake cowrie shell that looked exactly like a real one. Nature had already created the perfect coin. Then there was the gift economy. In many ancient communities, people simply gave things away. A hunter shared meat with his entire village. A farmer gave grain to neighbors in need. No one counted. No one tracked. No one demanded immediate repayment, but everyone remembered. And when the giver needed help later, the community responded. This was not charity. This was not generosity. This was survival. The gift economy was an insurance system. You gave when you had plenty. You received when you had nothing. The system worked because it was based on a simple truth. No one survives alone. But what happens when that trust breaks down? What happens when the community gets too big? What happens when you need to trade with strangers from distant cities? What happens when promises become too complicated to remember? The answer was metal. Around 600 BCE, in a kingdom called Lydia, someone took a piece of electrum, a natural mixture of gold and silver, and stamped a lion's head onto it. The stamp guaranteed the weight. The stamp guaranteed the purity. The stamp guaranteed that this piece of metal would be accepted everywhere. By everyone, without question. The first coin was born, and everything changed. Coins destroyed the trust-based economy. They destroyed the gift economy. They destroyed the temple banking system. Coins made it possible to trade with strangers without remembering obligations. Coins made it possible to accumulate wealth without depending on community. Coins made it possible to hoard. They made it possible to cheat. They made it possible to become rich while your neighbors became poor. Money replaced trust. Metal replaced memory. And humanity entered an entirely new era, one that we still live in today. But here is the question no one asks. The trust economy lasted for over 5,000 years. It fed millions. It built cities. It organized armies. It collected taxes. It distributed wealth. It worked. The coin economy has lasted for 2,600 years. It has produced inflation, debt crises, wealth inequality, and financial collapses. Which system was really better?